little technicality matter here. All right, so we are so happy to have with us today Lori Hall, who is going to be speaking to us about From Grief to Gratitude by Grace. And of course, Lori is no stranger to any of us. We've all been friends for a number of years now, so we're so deeply grateful that she has taken the time to actually join us today. So a little bit about her is Lori has over 40 years of experience in the field of education as a classroom teacher, reading specialist, and educational consultant. She holds a master's degree in the art of teaching, emphasis on communication. That's pretty impressive. Look at you. Uh, I'm easily impressed. All right, there we go. Now in her retirement years, she's become an Enneagram Educator, and she's designed and facilitated workshops that introduce and encourage the study of this sacred personality tool, which I've taken, by the way, and it's fascinating, too. You learn a lot about yourself. Lori is also a first-time author of the book, Birds Still Dance, From Grief to Gratitude by Grace. So we are so happy to have Lori to speak to us today, and she's going to be providing our music with Mike here today, who's going to be the guitar player for us. So we are definitely happy to have you, Lori, and the stage is now yours. All right.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Oh my gosh, this brings back such memories, Dan. Do I dare say Unity Church? But we were platform leaders or whatever, and I loved it when I was up front with Dan, and we're kind of up front together today, but I always called him Dan the Man. Woo! Oh yeah. So it was really sweet to find out that he was going to be introducing me. I don't need an introduction from any of you, and I love seeing so many familiar faces. And then those of you that I don't know very well, I feel like you're going to know me a little bit better. I may not know you by the time it's over, but we do have a lot more in common as people together, don't we, than how we are different. So again, my name is Lori Hall. I've lived north of the river for about 30 years. Maybe you have too. That could be a commonality. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and just recently a great grandmother. So I'm also very grateful for the 50 years that I had of marriage to my husband, John. And I have gone through deep grief of the loss of him, and maybe you have too. Maybe that's something we don't really want to have in common. And I wrote a book about it. Ta-da! Which I'll talk about a little bit in my message time. And last but not least, I love to sing and dance and have a glass of fine wine. So let's do that now, okay? Well, not the fine wine, and maybe not the dancing part, but let's stand up and let's start my time with you with a song, of course. I mean, we have to. Do you know the song, God Is My Source? Yeah, okay, so if you know it, start singing with me right away. If you don't know it, you can come in on the second, at least by the third verse. All right, we'll sing it through with different words in the beginning, like God, love, joy, and then we'll end with God. Or I might throw another word in there too. We'll just see how the Spirit moves me, okay? Here we go. God is my source. God is my power. God gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. God gives me everything I need. Love is my source. Love is my power. Love gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Love gives me everything. All right, pick it up. Joy now, come on. Joy is my source. Yeah, clap. Joy is my power. Joy gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Joy gives me everything I give thanks for all my blessings. Grace gives me everything. Now let's take it down with peace. Peace is my source. Peace is my power. Peace gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Peace gives me everything. Back to God. Ready? God is my source. God is my source. My power. Everything I need. So I give thanks. All my blessings. Everything again. God gives me everything I need. Last time. God gives me absolutely everything I need. Thank you. Oh, this reminds me of 4th grade. Because, you know, you get them up and you have them move around so that when they sit down, they'll listen to you for at least, let's see, what, 25 minutes? All right. Thank you so much. All right. Changing mics. You can sit over there. Okay. All right. And do I bring this up? Okay. All right. God is my source. God gives me everything I need. It's true. But if I didn't know that, and I didn't have the faith that I was inspired with through my childhood, through my adult years, I don't think I would have realized during deep grief that I had everything that I needed. Everything that I was going through. John, my beloved husband of 50 years, had died of cancer, and all of a sudden I was a widow. That was just 3.5 years ago. Life was scary, very different, lonely, and hard. One piece of therapy was to write, and God gave me the grace to be able to do that. The title of my time with you comes from the subtitle of my book, Birds Still Dance. The title, as Dan said, and it was on the screen, From Grief to Gratitude by Grace. The prepositions are just as important as the nouns. A little bit of 4th grade stuff. It is not only the core thread throughout my story, but it really is the core thread throughout my entire journey. And yours too, right? Because we all grieve, don't we? You do not have to have lost a spouse to know grief. Grief comes upon each and every one of us when we experience any type of loss. It can be the loss of a job, even when we chose to retire or to leave that particular job. It can be the loss of a pet. People that don't have animals don't really understand that kind of connection. It can be the loss of a home, even when you choose to move away. It can be the loss of our health. It can be the loss of our mobility as we age. The loss of a friend. I believe that many of us are experiencing that more and more as we get older. We have more of our contemporaries, our peers, that are now moving on. And the loss of a loved one through divorce or death. And we cannot control grief. We cannot stop it from happening. Experiencing grief for any type of loss can bring us into a place of deep sadness and often desperate loneliness, especially if our loss is someone that we really, really loved, whether they have passed away or whether we are just separated from them for an indefinite period of time. Father Richard Rohr, some of you may be familiar with him, a Franciscan priest, spiritual writer, and teacher, recently spoke of grief in one of his many online daily meditations. He says, "The great wisdom traditions are trying to teach us that grief isn't something from which to run. It's a liminal space, a time of transformation. In fact, we can't risk getting rid of this pain until we've learned from what it has to teach us." I believe that when we experience a loss, grief shows up in its natural way to actually help us let go. Letting go of what no longer is, whatever the loss is. And when we do allow ourselves to move through grief, not trying to escape it, not trying to get over it, but staying with it, and I don't mean being stuck in it, I mean moving with it, then we come to this loving, tender, compassionate place of gratitude. Gratitude for what we had, or what we still have. Allow me to read a passage from the very first chapter of my book called Grief and Loss, Inseparable Companions. Wanting to escape the memories within our home where John had died, and this is where I would go all around the room and read out loud to you, but I can't do that because of Zoom, so just know I'm doing this, wanting to escape the memories within our home where John had died. I headed to Florida in February to spend time on the beach. It had been 5 months, and I needed a change of scenery. The sun, the ocean air, the calming sound of the waves, and the soft sand were all around me, and so was grief. It had rudely joined me. I didn't remember packing it in my suitcase. Yet how foolish I was to think that I could escape it. As the tears poured out like the waves on the shore, I began to experience a sense of gratitude for the place and the time to grieve, which was accompanied by grace. Then I was open to hear, let it go, let the tears flow. This is a sacred and accepting place to be while you cry. Let the sun dry your tears and the ocean breeze soothe your soul. This ocean experience brought forth new thought for me, that if we allow it, if we are aware and open, we can experience grief and gratitude and grace all within just about the same moment. I grieve for no longer having John with me, missing him terribly. And then in just a moment later, I can feel incredibly grateful for all that we did have together. And that, to me, is grace. To be grateful for all that we did have is what moves us through the grief into the gratitude, which happens because of grace. By grace, as my subtitle says. I don't know how or why. And do I mean that once gratitude shows up, grief is gone? Hell no, right? I can say that, right? Because that's how strong I feel about that. Yeah, no, but God's unwavering, merciful, and intangible force of grace helped me not stay in a stuck, dark place. Grief was still present all over the house and even in sunny Florida. But when the heavy grief storms came and repeatedly showed up, it was like grace coming and handing me an umbrella. So what is grace? I cannot define it. But I can only say that from my experience, to me, it was a gift. It was, and I believe is, a powerful force, like grief, that shows up without asking and with no expectations. It is uncontrollable, and some might even say grace is undeserving. However, I want to add that grace was
and always is present. Unlike grief, thank goodness. One does not even need to be aware of its presence for grace to be there. I was often unaware. Yet when I was fumbling and falling with the heavy thunderstorm of grief upon me, Grace came swiftly to my rescue, holding out her steady and firm umbrella. You remember the storms last night? The thunder? Waking up? I had trouble going back to sleep. My daughter's like, oh, I loved it. I'm like, what? But that, to me, is a beautiful, natural analogy of grief and grace. The thunderstorm came. Did we have control over that? Could we have said, oh, I'm done, it's been 5 minutes, I want to get back to sleep? No. No, what did we have to do? We had to just kind of ride with it, right? We had to just go back to sleep, let it go, or pillow over your head, whatever. But it's there, we can't, but what is the difference is it passes, right? The storm passes. Grief passes. And I look at grace as being the sky. The sky is what? Always. Does the sky ever go away? No. The sky is always there, whether there's a storm or a sunny day. Grace, to me, that's it. So it's still raining, the winds are still blowing, grace is still there, but I was given a very small, safe shelter from the storm by grace. And it's all connected, and it's all good, and it all has a purpose. So these umbrellas of grace show up in various forms. Grace was a friend coming over every week, sitting on my couch, holding my hand and crying with me. It was my favorite raspberry pie at my door. It was a phone call from a very kind and thoughtful spiritual director who weeks and months later would check in on me and hadn't forgotten about my loss. Grace came as a matching set of two loving daughters helping me care for their dying father. I was grieving before John passed away, right? And he's dying. The grief starts when you find out that they're probably not going to be around. It's not only after. So my two loving daughters are showing up. That's Grace. And then my devoted son-in-law is driving 6 times to and from South Carolina within a year to support and be with us. There he is. My daughter Kate, my son-in-law Steve, definitely Grace, and they're here today with me. They didn't come just because I was talking. And we've had wonderful family time. Grace was also Melanie Dean. I know you know her. Reading my long, drawn-off, page after page, unedited version of my book so that she could honestly endorse it. I said, Melanie, you're a famous writer. Would you please endorse my book? She goes, well, wouldn't I have to read it first? And it was messy, and she muddled through it, and she did endorse it. Bless her heart. Grace is Terry Hale showing up, sitting with me, holding my hand through grueling self-publishing times, pulling out my hair, and she's putting it back in, and sending those wonderful homemade cards of hers. I don't know if any of you have ever gotten a card, but they're precious. And Grace was Sandy Crinkle, showing up to take me dancing, because she knew I needed to do something I loved. So I'm tearing up because we're saying goodbye to her again today. She's a friend of ours that many of you know that passed away just last month. More grieving. And yet, when I think of Sandy, through these tears, I smile. She brings me joy when I think of her. That's Grace. I am sure that you're familiar with the author Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote on death and dying and goes into the 5 stages of grieving and dying. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I went through all of those. But I want to mention another book, because David Kessler, who has studied with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is now today's expert on grief, wrote a book called Finding Meaning, the 6th stage of grief. It's a very critical stage, and you know, many of us automatically do that. We automatically go into finding meaning when something tragic happens, when we have a loss that breaks our heart. You know how people will have celebrations of life, right? And they just want to have this gorgeous, wonderful party, and I feel like we're going to be kind of doing that for Sandy today. And other people, I'm sure you've heard of, will start charities, right, for different causes, from things depending on what had happened. This book was extremely helpful to me, and it motivated me to continue to find more and more meaning in what happened. And so I contacted a few of my husband's colleagues, and we created a memorial scholarship called the John D. Hall Tools of Trade Scholarship. And these are for the Northland Career Center graduates. And just in May, after 3 years of doing this May we gave out 4 more. We have given a total of 11 scholarships. Now you're thinking a scholarship and they've graduated. But what it is it's for their tools, so that, think about it, you become a building trades carpenter, and don't you need that tool belt? And how are you going to buy those tools if you haven't started work yet? So this is for the culinary knives or the diesel mechanics tools and so on. So we've given out 11 of those scholarships. We've definitely found meaning in it. All the profits of my book, by the way, go to this scholarship fund. And giving to these students would have been exactly what John would have wanted. In fact, I feel like it was him telling me to do this. We didn't talk about this when he was alive. I didn't even think of this till months after. But I really feel like he was the one that had that voice in my ear going, duh. I worked there for 22 years. Wouldn't this be a great, earthly legacy? So it's wonderful. And he wanted always to share in all the abundance. He used that word often, didn't he? He used that word often. And he didn't mean material possessions. When he would pray, thank you, God, for all the abundance, he didn't mean that. He meant we were rich in friendships, in family, in our faith. That's the abundance that he always gave thanks for. And I am still in that abundance. I am so grateful for his legacy and for what lives on here on the planet. So before I close and move into a beautiful duet with Mike and I, he's such a gift to me, friendship and music, I want to read the last 2 paragraphs of my book. A long time ago when I was young, someone said to me, a long time ago when I was young, someone said to me that they thought that someday I would write a book. Guess they were right. I didn't think it would be about the death of my husband. But it finally happened, but how and when it happened is still a bit of a mystery to me. I know that I had a great longing to begin to write as I grieved John's death, and once I started writing, I couldn't stop. Yet there was nothing that I did other than tap into the creative force within me. It was like the book began to write itself. And by the grace of God, it is now complete. God uses the powerful emotion of grief to move us into the overwhelming presence of gratitude by his unconditional grace, to teach us, to transform us. Our transformation is never complete, but equips us with a wee bit of courage and enough faith to continue this mysterious and sacred journey. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share with you. It's really sweet time to be here. I want to end with a song. John and I shared music all of our lives. We even met at a dance. And so it would be appropriate to have music with you today. He loved music. We loved music together. You know, our faith made us strong. But music, I feel like that was the glue that would just hold us together. That was the joy of our relationship, a great connection. So one song that he had encouraged me to record and sing was Eva Cassidy's version of Over the Rainbow, not Judy Garland's. So the lyrics are the same, but the melody goes all over the place. It's called freestyle. And I couldn't sing it without Mike accompanying me. Come on up, Mike. He is a fantastic bass guitar player, brilliant, and honestly, I would not be able to have done this version at all without him. So I want to leave you on a high note, singing a wonderful classic about dreams and hope and light and the beauty of life here and beyond. I need water.
Can't do it without water.
Thank you.
Somewhere over the rainbow way, up high in the land that I've heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind